Greetings, brothers and sisters. I want to talk about the Netflix series, "The Fall of the House of Usher." Um, but first, I want to talk a little bit about the Philadelphia. This is the city and the people in it. And so I was watching the football game with my wife yesterday. The Buffalo Bills versus the Philadelphia Eagles. It ended up being a great game, and the Bills were dominating in the first half. I mean, just defensively stifling the Eagles. And by the third quarter, the Eagles fans had had enough.
Third and 14, Julio. That was wow. Goes nowhere. Taron Johnson was there to meet him. 3 plays and a net of -4 yards.
Okay, I'm going to talk about this in a second. But first, let's take a flashback to when Beyonce was in a group called Destiny's Child. And she showed up at the NBA Finals wearing, her and her crew were wearing Lakers stuff. And the Philadelphia fans were having none of it, and they booed her off the stage.
Destiny's Child.
I saw that game on TV, and I saw that happen. Apparently, the name of that song is "My Body Is Bootylicious." At least there's a line from the song that says that. And I also saw the Philadelphia Eagles football game in which they threw snowballs at Santa Claus. And they are like the most toxic fans anywhere. And, you think about the Raiders fans, but the Philadelphia fans are for every sport that the Philadelphia teams play. And they had turned on their team who has the best record. The Philadelphia Eagles end up going to win that game. It's an epic game. Buffalo outplayed them for much of the game, but they ended up winning in overtime. A few bad calls, a few mistakes by Buffalo. But it was an epic game. And Philadelphia is now 11-1. They were 10-1 coming into this game. Right before the start of the game, their best offensive lineman ends up getting scratched because of a groin issue, and they've lost other players during the game. So they had a few injuries. Buffalo was, fighting for their playoff lives and was playing great. And the Eagles were just down 10 points, and their fans were already turning on them. They played in the Super Bowl last year. They're the best team, record-wise this year. And their fans are already turning on them. Like it just took a half of, where they were pretty much stifled by the Buffalo defense for reasons that I've already explained. And they're already falling apart, the fans. Like it's just, if you've ever seen that, Bill Burr got booed by the Philadelphia crowd, and they had just booed a few comedians off the stage. So he set in on Philadelphia, just insulting them and things. It was kind of an epic moment. There's videos of it on YouTube. Philadelphia's come up a lot because of Will Smith and, that guy his friend who ratted him out. And, when Will Smith got Will Smith by that other dude. And, it's just such a toxic place because they've had very successful sports teams in Philadelphia. They've won championship in all 4 major sports, and their teams are usually fairly relevant. And they have at least one team of the 4 major sports has a chance to win the championship and is in the playoffs, right? The Phillies, the Flyers, the Eagles, and the 76ers have all been good franchises. And yet their fans are like, they're just obscenely negative and toxic and superstitious. There's that movie that came out with Robert De Niro and Jennifer, whatever her name is, Silver Linings Playbook. There was Oscars were won. It was kind of a comic, good movie. But it just showed how, like, obscenely superstitious and blame-oriented and, toxic the Philadelphia Eagles fans are, the Philadelphia sports community and the city itself. My wife was saying that it's just I don't know what this came up before the game. I don't know. We were talking about maybe a couple of days ago that Philadelphia is known for its organized crime and all these things. It's just worse than all those other cities. It's stuck between Washington D.C. and New Jersey and New York, and you go up there, it's Boston. Like all those cities are right in a row, and they're just you know it's a toxic place. And it's supposed to be the city of brotherly love. And it shows you everything that's like wrong with America and all of it, the entitlement and all those things. Like the Philadelphia Eagles fans couldn't tolerate that their team might be outplayed for a half by a team who's desperate, a good team who's desperate to win because they're, sliding out of the playoff race. And they, that was too much for them. Compared to other cities, there are cities that haven't won a championship ever in some of their sports. And, there's curses and Cleveland and Boston, these where people are very negative. Like there's negativity in cities and fan bases, but nothing like the Philadelphia situation. So the second thing I want to talk about, really the first thing, is the TV series "The Fall of the House of Usher." It's kind of loosely based on the works of Edgar Allan Poe. And when I first saw it, just the imagery that was there, it looked like some sort of Eyes Wide Shut horror movie type of thing, which it is a little bit. I had no interest in watching it. It just looked like something that was a horror-based kind of thing. I don't like horror stuff and any of that kind of stuff. It just was one of those things you looked at and you put in the category, that's not for me, right? But my wife and I watched it anyway. And I'm not sure how it happened, but I thought, we could look at it for a little bit, and if we thought it was too gross or too negative or something, of a horror nature, we could just, stop watching. And it was very gross. There's some graphic stuff, violence. There's, a lot of just, there is some woke stuff in it. There's a lot of stuff that I, generally don't like to see. But it's actually kind of a masterpiece. And my wife and I both remembered reading Edgar Allan Poe in grade school or wherever it was. I don't know when I read it. Maybe it was I think it was elementary school, which is weird, but it could have been later on. But, you have to read literature. And there are a lot of bad books and books I didn't like and authors I didn't like. It was just mandatory reading. And I don't like horror stuff. I don't like anything. I don't like macabre things. I don't like any of this kind of, goth-like stuff. And none of it. But I really liked Edgar Allan Poe. And my wife did as well. We were talking about it. We just really enjoyed reading. I think I read like all of his stuff. And I'm not sure what it was in my schooling process, but it kind of was counterintuitive or counter what I usually prefer to read and see. But for whatever reason, I really liked the guy. His stuff really resonated with me, and they did a great job of blending modern decadence and, it's kind of like the TV shows. It's similar, and it would be the same category as the TV shows Ozark and Succession, which are both excellent shows. Both are funny. Both have, excellent production values, acting, script. I mean, just all of it. But those shows I would never watch again. Like they just were like so negative in some ways. They're about the Ozark is about a family that does anything to survive in a decadent world. This guy Jason Bateman's character is a guy who does money laundering for drug cartels, and he's going to be killed by the drug cartel because his partner stole money from them. And so he says that he saw this pamphlet on the Ozarks, this water area. I guess it's in Missouri, and he says that he can launder money there. He just does that. He says that out of nowhere, like he just happened to see that thing that day, and he ends up laundering money for them, and they go on this trip. And the ending of this series is them becoming one of these power families, like one of these, Rothschild, Rockefeller type families. And it's really well done, and it's just icky. Like, it's just icky. It's like stuff that's true. There's truth or stuff in it. And of course, Succession is about this family that, based loosely on Rupert Murdoch's family and his empire, his media empire. And the patriarch is dying, and he's like a nasty person. And his kids are all vying for to be CEO and take control of his company. And it's, again, a masterpiece and well done. And it's just, I don't want to even call it depressing, but it's just like hard to sit through. So when you get to the end of it, it's dissatisfying and just icky. The Fall of the House of Usher has so much truther stuff in it, and it's very similar in different ways. But it starts off with this idea that it is a pharmaceutical company, a CEO of a brother and sister who have run a pharmaceutical company, and they I'm not going to say that much about the plot, the storyline, but you find right off the bat that the one guy's kids, his heirs, the CEO's heirs have all been killed in graphic and brutal ways that have each an Edgar Allan Poe aspect to their death. And so it's pretty gory, and there's some of the stuff we fast forwarded through, there was kind of almost like an orgy type stuff, and there's pretty, it's not nice, but it's the kind of people you'd want to see get their just desserts, all the people in it. Like, there's no heroes, there's nobody that you're rooting for. And you kind of know what's going to happen all along. And it has just blatant truther stuff in there. There's truther themes in there, and it's just confirmation of the so-called elite, what people in the truth community refer to as the elite, and who they are and what they're into, and the effects of money, power, and all of it. And there's just, it has to be seen. And like I said, it is very graphic and kind of gross, but somehow it's, like I said, a masterpiece. Like, I didn't feel bad after watching it. And there are things in it, I'm sure if we watched it again, my wife and I said we'd watch it again sometime, maybe some years from now, and we would notice things seeing it a second time. And, there are things, there's woke stuff in it, and it's just all there. The grossness, the decadence, it's just everything's there. And, I hadn't thought of Edgar Allan Poe in years. There was some other movie I'd seen that was based in some Edgar Allan Poe thing, but I hadn't thought about it. But my wife and I were talking about it in the middle, and we were like, oh, yeah, we kind of both liked Edgar Allan Poe. And, I have two things that are of that kind of, like everything else, I really dislike horror movies and all the things that go along with it. I'm not a big fan of Halloween's my least favorite holiday, all these things, right? But I like graveyards. When I was a little kid, my parents, when I went to Boston, and we were in some historic graveyard, where these, 200-year-old people who are maybe famous. I can't remember exactly the specifics, but it was a kind of a tourist place. And a squirrel crawled up my pants and my coat and sat on my shoulder and was asking for food. And I was like, I thought this was going to be my reality after that. Like a squirrel, just this tame squirrel that lived in this graveyard that people must have fed, and and I thought I'd be having that experience all the time. And it's something that I remember quite specifically because it's really cool. And that's my association with graveyards, and there's just something there. We did some sort of charcoal etchings when I was a kid in school, and there was things that I don't know. But that's my two things: Edgar Allan Poe and graveyards. And what I realized when my wife and I were watching it, that Edgar Allan Poe, didn't look at death as a bad thing, and he almost romanticized it. And our society is so warped that everything's about life and how great life is, and death is never thought about. And so there is a denial of death, we live with a denial that we're ultimately going to die, and the people around us are going to die, and our system and everything that we hold dear is going to collapse at some point, right? Because we associate death with evil, and death is a bad thing, right? And people who save lives and do things are, oh, this person saved so many lives, right? And even in this, it gets goofy a little bit at the end. Well, there's some parts of it that in this show where this one character is talking about all the lives that it's just that are going to be saved by another character, and this company is kind of references the Sackler family and the opioid epidemic and these things, and character saying you can't really, there's no such thing as pain relief or something that can stop a painkiller, right? Because it doesn't exist. Life is pain, right? And death is the only guarantee we have. But nobody thinks about it that way, right? We haven't learned to prepare for death, and very few people prepare for death or think about it. Everything's about celebrating life, which is, there's nothing wrong with celebrating life, but it has to be balanced off that there's, it's a limited time proposition and everything ends and everything is destroyed and, in one way or another, ultimately. And everything that, no matter what you do, what you build or what's out there, mountains and, whatever it might be, the planet itself eventually will be, lifeless and will some days not exist at all. And, that's part of it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Everything's temporary. In fact, when life becomes more easily lived and less serious when you have that attitude. In horror movies and all these things, it's not based in the celebration of death, but, it's even more so the idea that death is such a horrible thing and creating a really fear of death. Like, there is a natural fear of death, and they just have, pounded that in and made it like a phobia, made it something that goes beyond the natural fear of death and the natural inclination for survival. And so I felt like this, I don't know, was at least in part was a show that wasn't sort of like that, because the characters, you're rooting for them to die. Like, they're not, there's no redeeming qualities of these characters. What's going to happen to them, and it's good that it does happen, right? But a peaceful death, a good death, is where somebody accepts it, where it's something where it happens naturally, it happens at the right time, it happens in a way that's in the flow of everything, and you're prepared and grateful for it, and you go along with it and surrender to it. And that's just doesn't exist because everybody talks about fighting, beating cancer and fighting off all these things. And, all these negatives that are in our life are a part of it. All the undesirable things they're undesirable because we don't accept that they're inevitable. The majority of movies and TV shows, there is conflict and there is, I've talked about this. How many times have you seen the world be saved, right? By a superhero or by this or that or whatever, some spy thing, or people always saving the world and saving other people's lives and, doing things to create the hero defeats the evil and everybody lives happily ever after. And that, it is a bad way to look at life, and it's not accurate at all. People are then defined in these categories of hero and villain, and people are heroes until they're villains, and, this way of changing the narrative from, somebody being celebrated to being somebody who's condemned, and these are the good people, and these are the bad people, and this is the good countries, and that's the bad countries. And then the other people who believe the opposite of us believe, like people who are Republican believe that Democrats are evil, and that Democrats believe the Republicans are evil, all these things. And, if this guy's going to destroy the world, and that guy's, like, this is how it's viewed right now. It's more extreme now, but it's always been there. Like, if Trump gets reelected, it's the end of America and democracy. If Biden stays elected, stays president, then he'll continue running the country into the ground, and, all these things, and the way that people view this. But in reality, whatever is supposed to happen is supposed to happen. And our ability to accept that, what's good for the the overall, the big picture of everything, the divinity and the divine plan that's there. And that also includes our death and the destruction of things that we love and losing things that we are connected to and cherish and people and, all these things and letting go and accepting that this is a temporary situation, that we're in some sort of an illusionary situation. And it's not, it's not our real self. Our real self is a spiritual being that is encompassed and has created a body and is playing out some life, and there's some divine drama going on here, and we're all, sucked into the illusion. But it's not to be taken all that seriously. And that when we die and we leave, it's not tragic, and it's not, it's not the end. There's something more. There's something, there's a purpose here. And that purpose is far beyond our egotistical orientation to this world, right? Like I've said before, that most people are butthurt, and people say my feelings are hurt or I'm offended. It's their egos, and your ego means nothing to me. Like my ego means nothing to me, right? It's not important what your ego likes or dislikes, because your ego is the only thing that can align itself against the divine will. And your ego can create its own mini creation, and that mini creation is at odds with the divine creation. And when the mini creation gets destroyed, which inevitably it does, it's painful to the ego, but it's a good thing. And when the collective creation that we've all manifested here, that is clearly not of a divine nature, gets destroyed, all of us who are invested in this will be shocked, and will be bummed, and we'll be feeling out of control, and why is this happening, and get mad at God or whatever. But it's for the collective good, and it's because we've created something that's not divine and not aligned with the divinity within us, the collective divinity. And your ego's eventually going to be told something it doesn't like or doesn't agree with, because you're living a lie. Your ego's living a lie. Unless it's purified and it agrees to follow your soul and do what you're supposed to do, and that's a rare situation. And for everybody else, your ego's going to, get dinged up because it's not true. It's not a true thing. Your ego is, deception. It's abomination, right? Like, let's say you were at work and you walk around and people are talking, boop about you, boop, and it hurts your feelings, and but what difference does it make? Like, you don't care about people you don't care about, who you yourself gossip about, right? And who, you don't care about their opinion. Maybe their opinion's right, and when your opinion's right, that's when it hurts the most, right? When you hear things that you know to be true, but you can't accept those things. You don't believe those things. You don't want to believe those things. And so that's why people get upset. And then when people believe other things, have other beliefs that go against your twisted beliefs and their twisted beliefs, and, untrue beliefs and your untrue beliefs. And, there's these culture wars now going on, belief wars. And it's all a bunch of lies. Everybody's beliefs are distorted. And it doesn't matter, right? It's just ego stuff, and it's, a waste of time and a waste of energy, and it's all going to be destroyed at one point or another for the good of everybody, everything and everybody, because it's it's a deviation from the truth path that you were sent down here to find and follow. So anyways, that was my reaction to the House of Usher. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.